Now let's move on to Samana. Chaucer presents the summoner's physical disorders in a way which suggests inner or spiritual corruption. He chooses the summoner's ailments with the contemporary medical explanations of them in mind. For instance, the summoner is portrayed as having a pimpled face, a fire red complexion, scabby brows, and a shaggy beard. There was no medicine or ointment or cream that would cure him of the pimples or of the lumps of flesh on his cheeks. And children are afraid of his visage. They are afraid of his face. Why are they? Because he looks very ugly. Because he has a pimpled face, scabby brows and all. So he looks very horrible to children, and that's why they are scared of him. Besides, the summoner had coarse tastes. He was fond of eating garlic, onions and leeks, and drinking strong wine red as blood. Chaucer makes fun of him by pointing out that when the summoner was drunk, he would speak no word but Latin, of which he knew only a few expressions, particularly the one that means the question is what law applies. The question is what law applies, and repeating it constantly. The summoner was morally corrupt, and there is no doubt about it. The summoner was morally corrupt. He would allow a fellow to keep a mistress for 12 months just for a quart of wine, and he could also take advantage of a girl, that is, seduce a girl if he got the opportunity. So he was a thorough rake, a lecher, a repulsive character. Like if you happen to see such a man, you are going to hate him. And Sumner is like that. I think Sumner is the only character who is presented by Chaucer in such a negative light. Means where we find that criticism has become a little harsh. Otherwise, with other characters, he is very mild, very genial. But the way he has described the physical ailments and all, we find that even Chaucer abhorred him or did not like him, you may say. He taught people not to feel afraid of the archdeacon's curse. Archdeacon means excommunication. Archdeacon's curse, like when people commit some sin, they are excommunicated from the society. That means there is a social boycott. They are ostracized. So he tells people not to feel afraid of the archdeacon's curse, because he expressed the view that by paying a good round sum, a fellow could get release from the curse. And even now people do this. You see, the priests or the pandits for that matter, they take money and then they would say, well, you are free from all sins and all. So within his jurisdiction, the Sumner had control over the young people of his territory, because he knew their secrets and acted as their advisor. Thus, in the character of the Sumner, we get a combination of physical ailments, gastronomic excesses, lechery, religious hypocrisy, and impiety. And one thing more, we also notice good fellowship in him. Okay, these are the important characteristics, remember them. And gastronomic excesses, lechery, religious hypocrisy and impiety, and good fellowship. Now we move on to the next character in the prologue. The next ecclesiastical character that we come across in the prologue is the pardoner. The pardoner, can you understand? The pardon is from the word pardon.
Forgive.
Yeah, one who forgives, one who pardons. So pardoner. The pardoner, we are told, has come straight from the papal court at Rome, and he bears a bag full of pardons, like Santa Claus, carries a bag full of gifts, and he carries a bag full of pardons. We would naturally question the authenticity of these pardons, about which Chaucer speaks in a humorous vein. The pardoner carries with him as relics a pillowcase, which he claims to be a part of the Virgin's veil. My goodness. And a piece of cloth, which he claims to be a part of St. Peter's boat. He also has a cross made of brass but studded with gems, and some pig bones, which he will claim are a saint's relics. Look at him. Just see the way he befools people. He also has a cross made of brass but studded with gems, and some pig bones. Pig bones. This is something so abominable, disgusting, and he will claim they are saints' relics. So you can understand, means they are thoroughly corrupt, these clergymen. They must have been so in his age. That's why he has quoted them in his prologue. He befools people and the parish priest, and makes more money in one day through his preaching than the priest receives in 2 months. But Chaucer also acknowledges that his pardoner is a noble ecclesiastical in church. Just see, again he is very genial. He is calling him noble. When he calls him noble, do you mean Chaucer actually meant that he was noble? No, he doesn't mean this. This is an ironic expression, okay? This is an ironic expression. Okay, if this is not ironically said, it means that pardoner's preaching are so eloquent that the congregation is much impressed by him, and that the effect he creates forces his listeners to give him as much silver as he wants. So this is very important. We can prepare a separate question on Chaucer's humor and irony. In every character, you notice that he uses his mild irony. This is his forte, you may say, Chaucer's forte. Like this genial irony happens to be forte of Jane Austen also. You have read novels by her, Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility. But Chaucer excels them all.